Sometimes the enemy is not the one who attacks, but the one who stays silent and waits. He doesn't shout. He doesn't threaten. He doesn't strike openly. He listens. He nods. He shows concern. And you open up. That is where everything begins. With trust that seemed earned. With a conversation that sounded like support. With a friendship that later turned out to be a trap. Machiavelli knew this. It is not open hostility that destroys a person, but false closeness. Not the blow, but the betrayal. Because betrayal always comes from within. It is born in the moment when you are not expecting an attack. When you let someone into the most vulnerable places. Your mind, your heart, your home. He warned that a person who seeks power or advantage will hide their true intentions. Until the very end. They will wear the face of a friend, an advisor, an ally, and remain that way only as long as it is useful to them not to destroy you. And if you fail to see that moment before it arrives, you have already lost. Because you did not recognize the enemy, because you mistook the mask for the face. And now the pain doesn't come from the strike, but from the realization that you yourself brought that hand close to you. Naivety in a world ruled by calculation is not weakness, it is a mistake, one that comes at a very high price. Falsehood is a poison that does not act immediately. It doesn't burn like truth. It seeps into your blood through gentle words, through supposed care, through small concessions and perfectly timed phrases. And you don't notice how you lose control, how you begin to trust, how you train yourself not to doubt. You become convenient, accessible, open, and then one day you wake up. And everything collapses. You don't understand how you ended up in this trap. Why you were betrayed, why the blow came from the very place where you expected salvation. Only then do you begin to understand. The mistake was not that someone lied to you. The mistake was that you refused to see the truth. Machiavelli was cruel, but fair. He offered no illusions. He did not comfort. He taught how to look at the essence of things. And that essence is simple in a society built on interests. Honesty is a risk. Directness is a weakness. Trust is a luxury, affordable only to those who know when to stop. You are not required to become cruel, but you are required to be rational. Otherwise, again and again, you will become a target. And each time it will not be someone else who betrays you, but your own belief in illusion. This is where the most important part begins. If you want to protect yourself, you must learn to see the motive behind the words. The interest behind the smile, the calculation behind the gesture of help. Because only the one who sees reality can control it. Everyone else is merely a victim of someone else's plans. You may convince yourself for a long time that it only happened once, that the person you opened up to was simply not who they claimed to be, that they failed you because they themselves were broken or confused. But the truth is deeper. You were not deceived. You did not want to see the obvious, because inside you there was a need for trust, for warmth, for someone who would understand. And you closed your eyes to everything that contradicted that desire, to strange looks, to evasive answers, to feelings that did not match actions. You saw the mask and pretended it was a face, because it was easier. But easier does not mean safer. Machiavelli knew, most people do not want the truth. They want confirmation of their illusions. And false, cunning people feed on exactly that. They sense weakness not as something physical, but as an energetic gap. They do not force their way in. They enter where they are invited. They get close too quickly. They listen too much. They repeat too often that they understand you. And you begin to depend on their attention like air. Until one day you realize you are suffocating. Because all that air was a trap. And now you don't miss the person. You miss the feeling they skillfully imitated. That is why the first weapon must be vision. Not with your eyes, but with intuition, observation, patience. Machiavelli wrote that people are rarely what they seem. He did not call for paranoia. He taught not to be blind. You are not obligated to see an enemy in everyone, but you are obligated to look not at what a person says, but at what they gain from your interaction. What benefits them? How do they behave when you are weak? How do they speak about others when those people are not present? How do they react to someone else's success? Truth hides in these details, because deceit cannot hide for long. If you know how to wait, but seeing is not enough. A false person is not only someone who hides, it is someone who extracts too much from you. They don't act directly. They don't attack. They make you open yourself. They ask the right questions. They push you toward confessions. They build trust, and later you pay for it with pain. This is where the next line of defense appears. You must not tell your story to someone who has not proven they can protect it, no matter how strong your need to be heard is. Machiavelli said that one who cannot hide their intentions is doomed to fail, because once someone knows what you truly want, they begin to manipulate that desire. They build a trap around you in which you walk exactly where they need you to go, believing you chose the path yourself. Your intentions are the most valuable thing you possess. They govern your actions, and if someone learns them too early, they can bend your path so subtly that you won't even notice when you step onto someone else's chessboard. Protection is not coldness. It is choice. Say less than you know. Show less than you feel. Be a mirror. Reflect the other person, but do not reveal yourself. Not out of fear, out of respect for your inner fortress. And when you learn to stay silent not because you have nothing to say, but because you know the price of your words, you begin to see how others change. Those who came for benefit lose interest. Those who wanted control grow irritated. They cannot penetrate you. They don't know how to interact if you don't reveal your cards. That is when real faces appear. They begin to rush, to force closeness, to throw phrases meant to make you relax, to expose yourself. They talk about trust you supposedly don't give them. But this is not about you. It is about their hunger, the hunger for control. And the less you react, the more power you hold. But silence alone is not enough. You must observe. False and cunning people are rarely capable of deep sincerity, but they always suffer from insatiability. Their gaze is greedy. Their goals are greedy. Their desires are greedy. They always want more. Respect, influence, recognition. Here, Machiavelli offers not conflict, but a game. He taught, if you see someone greedy, feed them the illusion of power. If you see someone vain, give them a stage. Because vanity and greed are not just weaknesses, they are strings. Pull them correctly, and you can move the whole person. They will do whatever you want if you create the illusion that everything is under their control. Machiavelli wrote, men sooner forget the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. In this sentence lies the essence. People are attached to what they possess, and if you see this, you see who they truly are. But there is a fine line. The moment you begin to control, you attract attention. Sooner or later, the false person senses a threat. They may retreat, or they may strike. They may try to destroy your reputation, make you the villain, regain control. That is why the next step is not manipulation, but calculation. Machiavelli warned, never seek revenge unless you are certain the blow will be fatal. Half measures invite war. If you decide to expose, remove, or push a false person out of your life, you must be prepared to finish it, without fear, without hesitation, without the desire to explain or understand. Either destroy the threat, or leave it completely alone. If you strike, strike so there is no return. If you leave, leave without explanations, without scenes, without leaving a door open. Otherwise, they will return, in another form, with another story, but with the same goal, to get inside again. And if you allow it, the lesson was not learned. Even if you walked away in silence, leaving them in their own emptiness, the question remains, how do you deal with those who keep pretending to be necessary? Because deceitful people do not disappear. They change masks. They return in new forms, new faces, similar situations. And if inside you there is even a trace of a desire to fix, convince, or explain, you risk becoming part of their game again. Machiavelli did not believe in moral rebirth. He believed in stable human nature. That is why he said, do not try to change the corrupt, use them temporarily and with calculation. Cold words, but truthful. The one who sold you once will sell you again, not out of malice, but because that is how they are built. Your kindness will not change this. This is both tragedy and liberation. You are not obligated to save anyone. You are not required to be fair to someone who will never be fair to you, but you can be strategic. You can understand their strengths and weaknesses, and use them the way one uses the wind. Not because you trust it, but because you know its direction. False people can be useful. They go where you want. They do what you refuse to do. If you see them as tools, not companions, you keep control. The moment you start believing they have changed, understood, repented, you are trapped again. A deceitful person does not change. They adapt. They adjust to your expectations, your style, your weaknesses, but inside, they remain the same. Machiavelli knew, to use is not to accept. To work with is not to bring close. Sometimes you walk alongside because it is advantageous, but but it is always temporary, always with a cold mind and readiness to let go at any second. And here comes the hardest challenge. To be able to use, you must be strong inside. You cannot complain. You cannot break down. You cannot lose form. The slightest weakness is a signal. They immediately sense when you are tired, when you want support, when you are alone, when you are vulnerable. Then comes the next phase: false closeness, support, attention, words you have long wanted to hear. But this is not care. It is reconnaissance. They come where it is warm, so they can later turn everything against you. And now you stand at the boundary, outside, a world where everyone may be a mask. Inside, you, your essence, your fortress, and everything you have built can collapse in one moment. If you allow yourself to become transparent to someone who came not to love, but to use. Machiavelli understood. Even the strongest loses if their wounds are visible. Even the wisest becomes vulnerable if their pain is exposed. So the next truth sounds like an order to reason, not emotion. Do not show weakness, even when it hurts. This world does not forgive cracks. Your vulnerability may be understood, but more often it will be exploited. You can be kind, but you must not be predictable. You can be humane, but you have no right to be open until you are certain who stands before you. Because a false person is a hunter. They smell pain. They recognize loneliness. They catch trembling, doubt, longing. And instead of embracing you, they wait until you hand them the keys. Then they enter, not to stay, but to take everything that is still unprotected. You don't have to be cold, but you must be opaque. You can stay silent when you are hurting. You can smile when there is a storm inside. You can look straight ahead even when your heart wants to hide. This is not lying. This is discipline. Inner strength should not be shown to everyone. Machiavelli taught, a prince may appear merciful, but must be capable of cruelty. Meaning, you may give warmth, but you are not obligated to burn in it. You may offer words, but you are not required to reveal your soul, especially to those who have already proven they cannot protect, cannot guard, cannot value. Strength is not loudness. It is silence at the right moment. It is a gaze that does not beg. It is behavior without explanations. You owe no one proof, no justifications, no pleas to be understood. Those who are truly close do not demand words. Those who demand them in order to stay will leave the moment you stop speaking. And then you will understand. The real ones do not fear silence. The false ones live only in it, because noise keeps them alive. And when you become this opaque, restrained, calm person, you are finally ready for the last step, the hardest one, because it requires not words, but finality. You reach the line beyond illusions. No desire to clarify, no need to explain your silence, only quiet, where strength is born. And in this quiet, you make the most liberating decision. Remove false and deceitful people from your life, silently and permanently, not with hysteria, not with anger, not with a final speech they must hear, because they don't care. Every explanation is another entry point, another hook. Machiavelli wrote, "It is better to be cruel once than to suffer harm little by little." This is maturity. You don't have to leave beautifully. You have to leave irrevocably, not because you are angry, but because you are done. Because you no longer give second chances to those who wasted the first. Because you choose silence over doubt, cold clarity over emotional leakage, self-respect over waiting. False people cannot let go, because they never truly arrive. They did not build anything with you. They consumed what you built alone. When you close the door, they panic. They write. They question. They accuse. They play the victim. But this is not remorse. It is a reaction to losing access, not to you, but to the source you provided. Attention, energy, trust. Now they stand outside. No keys, no explanations, no return. Do not look back. Do not respond. Do not replay conversations in your mind. You already understand. You are no longer a puppet in someone else's subtle game. You are free, not from the person, but from the illusion that you could change them. Not from memories, but from the belief that reciprocity was guaranteed. No, you did your part. Now you move forward, stronger, clearer, deeper, with a cold mind and a warm heart, with silence that carries truth, not lies. That is victory, not in punishing someone, but in becoming unreachable, calm, unbreakable, without the need to prove, return, or fix, just living, without them. That is power. Machiavelli would not call this cruelty. He would call it wisdom, because the cruel one plays the game. The wise one leaves, silently, forever.